Hello everybody and welcome back. This is part 20 of our Trumpeter 1200 scale HMS Hood build. So last week we managed to get the back of the shelter deck a bit more detailed with the pom-pom bandstand and the after defence position installed. And you remember we did some work on the 4-inch ready use lockers at the back. In this part I want to move forward onto the forward part of the shelter deck and start to get some of those details done. And install the funnel bases and probably the funnels as well this week. But before we do that, there's a bit of reworking to do, I'm afraid, and that's with some of the deck parts. You remember quite a few episodes now I fitted these etched brass overlay decks to the forward part of the shelter deck, and I want to do some work on them, so I've removed them. They were attached with super glue, so they popped off without any damage at all. The reason why I've taken them off is that they need a little bit of modification. Current thinking is that the outboard part of the shelter deck here was covered in a material called Semtex, which was an anti-slip material, and it was coated around some of the working positions of the UP mounts and the 4-inch mounts forward here. So I want to remove the effect of the corticine on these parts. I'll just sand them off so that I can repaint these in a combination of the corticine coloured brown that I've been using on the rest of the ship and a Semtex material. The problem with that is that we're not quite sure what colour the Semtex was on Hood. There is a suggestion that it was a dirty tan colour. So I'm going to try and replicate something to have a go at that. The most important thing is to clean this grid pattern for the corticine away from the areas where I want to replicate the Semtex. There's also these parts which are also deck pieces, which cover the after UP position here and the number 2 mount 4-inch mounting here at the back, and they're completely representative of corticine, and these were Semtex around these working positions, so they need cleaning off. I did have an idea that I could simply swap these over and use the back side of them, which are obviously perfectly smooth. The problem is that they're not the same shape. I thought that they might be exactly the same, but they're not. When you put them back to back, there's this little section here on one part which doesn't show on the other one, so we can't just swap them over. They're going to need sanding off and cleaning up. So it's a bit of a backward step really, but I wanted to get this as right as I could. And obviously before I fit the funnel bases I want to get these sorted out. So I'm going to strip them down, get them reprimed, and we'll paint them in a combination of the brown that we've used for the corticine and the new Semtex areas. And I'm going to mix a shade of tan and grey that I hope will represent that area pretty well. As I say, we're not absolutely sure what colour that Semtex was, so it's anybody's guess. It might come to light in the future, but it's a bit like the hull decision that we made to paint the underside grey. Nobody's sure what colour grey that was, and you just have to go with your gut feeling on it. So I'm going to do that, and we'll get this rectification work done. While I'm about it and I'm gluing these decks down, I'm not going to use super glue again. I'll use some 2-part epoxy, 5-minute rapid epoxy to glue these decks down. So once they're down, I don't think I'll get them up again if I discover anything else. And I'll also use that epoxy to repair the after screen that, as you know, popped off earlier on. So there's quite a lot of reworking to do this week. I'm not sure actually how much new work I'll get done, but I do want to get it sorted and how I want it. So we'll get these parts prepared and hopefully get them refitted to the model. So I'm going to deal with these first. These are around the these are the inserts for the sort of central area of the shelter deck. the number 2 4-inch mounting fits here, and this is the after UP mounting. And rather than sand all this corticine detail off this part, I'm just going to cut some new ones. I've already done the starboard side, and I've just used the template from the brass part to make a new one out of this card. I think this is 0.2. It's roughly the same gauge and as the brass. I've test fitted it on the deck and just trimmed it to fit nice and snugly around the wooden deck, which goes around this area here. So that one's done and ready to go. And do the port side one now. As I said, it is a different shape slightly in this area here. So I'll use one of the edges of the card, or two of the edges of the card here, to start me off. I've got a nice new blade in this knife, and I'll just gently go around the edges of the brass part. And as always, when you're cutting card or anything like this, don't try and do it all in one go. Nice and gently. You don't want to be pushing the brass away, because you want to get an exact copy really of the shape. So just score the card gently. And also the circle of the 4-inch mount. There's some photographic evidence. I was just studying the photos the other day when I was looking at the number 3 mounting next to the after control position, and it was pointed out to me that the 4-inch mountings actually had a square plate under them, which I'll replicate a bit later on. So I think we're most of the way through this. Let's have a look, see if we can free it. I'll just take this newly cut one over to the model just to check that it fits. It'll probably need a little bit of trimming. Even the extra distance of the knife blade does cause a little bit of a oversize of these parts, so it'll need a little bit of trimming. Okay, so I've tested them against the ship and they're a good fit. So they can just be put to one side, primed and painted. Now I need to do the larger sections. So this is the section of the forward shelter deck that I removed. As you can see, it's previously been painted in the corticine colour that I mixed up. But I want to mark out the areas that were Semtex, or believed to be Semtex, on this part of the deck, obviously on both sides. And to do that, I'm going to refer to a drawing that summarised the research that's been done, and that's on modelwarships.com website. There's a thread on the forum called Calling All HMS Hood Fans. I've posted one or two queries on that forum, but on it there's some new research that's been done onto the presence of cortisine on these forward parts of the shelter deck, and that debate's come to some sort of conclusion. It's not absolutely certain just at the minute, but I'm going to go with the latest information. There's a summary drawing that's been done on that, and you can see the link for that below, and that's the drawing that I'm going to follow to mark out this section of the deck and get the cortisine area removed on this. So this is the drawing that I'm studying, and you can see how it's marked out the areas now believed to be Semtex on the shelter deck. We've done these parts here at the back around the number 2 port and starboard mountings, 4-inch mountings, and it's this area here that I want to look at next, and that's the after part of this piece of brass here. So roughly around this gangway here and the number 1 4-inch mounting. The pom-pom location's here, and we're not sure at the minute whether or not that was Semtex, so I'm just going to leave that in cortisine. The front UP mount here, which is this position, has a separate piece of brass which goes inside the shield, so I'll do that in the Semtex colour that I mix up. So we just need to clear this area here around the number 1 4-inch gun, and slightly forward of that to this gangway here. So I'll mark that out, and we'll get the cortisine retaining strips removed from that space. So it's this area here that I want to clear of the cortisine strips. The rest of the deck will stay in the cortisine, and this is the Semtex area here. This line here is more or less the line of the row of ready-use lockers, 4-inch ready-use lockers that runs around the back of this mounting here. So that's the line that I'm going to follow. So we'll go in now and just clear that, just sand all this detail off. Right, so after quite a bit of work, I've smoothed off all the representation of the cortisine from this area of the deck here. And it was pretty difficult to do actually, because it's stainless steel, this part, and it's pretty hard, and it took quite a bit of work to get rid of that detailing. But it's off now, so I'm going to strip the whole of this section of deck, reprime it and repaint it. So I've got the Semtex areas of the deck done, and I guess it's come out a kind of a concrete colour really. So I've tried it on the ship anyway, and it looks okay, so I'm not going to mess about anymore with it and leave it at that. We just need to get the edge of this part of the Semtex masked off, and we can do the rest of the cortisine in the brown colour. Right, you can see how we've done with the masking. We can get that removed now. Okay, I'm pretty happy with those. So I think it's time to get them reinstated on the model. I've done this before in an earlier part, so I won't do that on video. I don't want to repeat myself, and I also want to concentrate on getting this done properly. It's quite a crucial part of the build really, and I don't want to mess it up, so I'll go off camera, get them done, and we'll have a look at what it looks like when I've got that work done. Before I fit the funnels, I just want to catch up with a couple of modifications that I've done to the funnels since part 14 when we built them. And the first one is thanks to Nigel from Nigel's Modelling Bench, who messaged me to point out that I'd got this wrong. The Trumpeter have you fit the baker's kitchen flue up the forward edge of the funnel, and I did that in the original build in part 14. But Nigel pointed out to me correctly that that didn't happen. The flue penetrated the base of the funnel here on the forward side and would have vented from the inside of the funnel with the rest of the exhaust. So that was simple enough to correct. I just cut the old flue off, and I used the base of it to modify this replacement flue piece, which goes forward to the bridge base. So that's easy enough done, and that's accurate now. So thanks Nigel for pointing that out to me, it's much appreciated. The second thing that I want to deal with relates to the aft funnel. And if we look closely, this is the foil for the original Pontos aft funnel, which is the smaller one that we didn't use. But you'll notice on it this little patch. And that's accurate. It's actually a repair patch from some splinter damage the ship sustained at Mers El Kebir, I think in 1940, when the French fleet was destroyed. So Hood took part in that action and sustained some splinter damage, one of which was this hole in the after funnel. The problem is that in our build of the after funnel we used 2 fret 5 foils like this, which doesn't contain that patch. Incredibly though, if we look closely at the Pontos fret 5, it's the same on fret 6, it appears also on fret 6. There's this part here, 410, and it's not referred to in any of the instructions anywhere, but that amazingly is a repair patch. So we can use that to add that missing detail from the after funnel where we've used the foil from fret 5. So I'll cut that out and we'll get it mounted onto the after funnel. So I'm just checking a photo just to make sure that the location of the patch is in the right place. This picture here actually shows the splinter hole and the gang up on the precarious looking rig to repair it. Amazing, health and safety, look at that. So I can now put that patch on. and just give that a coat of paint. Okay, it's all painted up. You can just see the patch here. So that's good to go. Okay, back at the ship now, and I'm ready to fit the funnel bases permanently. Before I do that, there are a couple of small parts that I need to locate before this forward funnel base. I just think it'll be a bit awkward to get it in if I don't do it now, so I'll do this first. I just need to fit this part B31, which goes here just to the port forward side of the forward funnel base. I'm doing it now because I just think it'll be a bit awkward to get it in afterwards once I've fitted the funnel. And the other part we need to do is B4, which is this one, which fits to the side here. I'll use some polystyrene for this. Okay, that's in place all right. So I can do the forward funnel base now. Right, so that's all right. The after base now. I'm not applying any glue to the bottom edge of these pieces, and that's because it'll squeeze out onto the decks. So I'm just putting some on the inside faces so that they'll mate with the vertical faces of the relief here, and that'll be enough to hold them in place. So now that we've got the funnel bases installed, I want to come back to these parts, which it's a long time ago now, back in part 8 when we were doing the bridge base. Pontos provided some extension pieces for the lower aft side of the bridge base, which sent the bulkhead backwards towards the rear line of the bridge, and these parts face aft. But when I came to try and fit the bridge and test fitted it with the forward funnel base, there wasn't enough room for these to fit in, so I detached the part at this end from the curved part of the extension screen. I'll show you this back on the model when we come to fit it, but they didn't fit at all, so I just cut them off, thinking that I would come back to them when I had the forward funnel base fitted and I could measure this part accurately with that forward funnel base in place and get it installed. So now that we've done that, it's time to get this back in. So there are two of them, obviously, one for each side. These are something that aren't often reflected in models. I don't know that any of the main manufacturers, any of the models include these parts on the back of the bridge base. So Pontos picked it up. We're advised by the thread on modelwarships.com when they were developing the set. There was a lot of input from the Hood Association and others to make the set as accurate as possible, and this is one of the things that Pontos built in response to that advice. I've adjusted them now to fit, and we can get them painted and put them on the model. We'll get back to the ship once we've done that. So this is the area that we're working in for these bulkhead parts, and the problem with them originally, they came as part of this curved screen here, which extended the Trumpeter bridge base backwards and around this curve. So there's this curved bend here that we made, and originally this rear bulkhead part was attached at the front, and when I came to try and fit the bridge base, it wouldn't fit in. So at that stage I decided, as I said, to cut them off, knowing that when I got the bridge base in place I could just refit them. So I'm going to do that now, and they're still a pretty tight fit really, but I have trimmed them and test fitted them. So I'm blocking you off there from the view, but it's quite tricky to get them located properly. So they're a very tight fit, and I'm just actually pushing the deck down slightly. It just gives them that fraction of a millimetre extra space. I haven't applied any glue at this stage, and that's because I don't want to get any smeared on the deck. We want those in a straight line, and I'm just going to put a dab of glue at the back here where you're not going to be able to see it. So better go around to the other side to do that. So I'm going to come in from this side and just put a spot of medium super glue at the top. Where it's not going to be seen. I think that'll do the job. The number of times I've knocked these flag lockers off drive me nuts. Just want to fit the ladder now, and I hope that it fits past that new bulkhead. It should do, it looks okay. That's alright now, so I'll do the other side and we can come back and fit the funnels. So I can come on to the funnels now. As you know, I was reluctant to fit these before I built the case, but now I'm a lot happier to put them in position now. So just a bit of glue around the bottom. And the aft one. and I can fit the funnel caps as well. You'll remember the fun I had building those. Good. Right, so I think we're done there. Right, so that's a big step taken, I think. I said when I built the funnels what a difference they make to the look of the ship. It's unmistakably the hood. No other capital ship had a funnel arrangement quite like that. And it's very distinctive, and obviously it makes the model start to look something complete. You'll notice that the Admiral's bridge is missing from the model, and that's because I've removed it to do the side screens that I mentioned in an earlier part. If you look back at the video when I built the Admiral's bridge, there was some debate about whether or not the solid screen around the outside was present, and I don't believe it was. I think it was railing, but at sea I think it would have been covered with some canvas screening. So that's what I've done. It's on the bench, having that screen fitted, and I can come back next week and get that back into position. So that's it for part 20. The work on the Cortesine and Semtex areas I think was worth doing, although there is still debate, and I think there'll probably be some debate for a while, both about the configuration of the Semtex and the extent to which it was present on the shelter deck, and also the colour, obviously. The colour that I've used is very speculative, and I wouldn't want anybody to take that as gospel. Nobody knows at the moment exactly what colour that is, so it's just my hunch looking at the tones from various photographs. So it's a matter of personal choice, and don't take it that this is an exact match, because we don't know. So if you're going to do that yourselves, you're going to have to please yourself with the colour that you eventually decide on. But I think the tan grey colour is okay, looks fine. So that's it. As I said, next week I'll come back and get the bridge, Admiral's bridge, refitted, and I'll show you the change that I've made to the side screen on that. I'll also be continuing to fit the detail work around the funnel bases. There's quite a bit to do in terms of hatches and ammunition boxes. I can't face doing the ready use lockers so soon after tackling the 15 that I did at the back, so I'll give myself a rest for a couple of weeks before I come back to those. But there's plenty of other work to be getting on with, and we'll be tackling that next time. So that's it. That's as much as I'm going to get done for this week and for this particular episode. So I hope you've found something useful in it, particularly if you're building your own model of the hood. And I'll be back again as usual on Friday for part 21. So in the meantime, I hope you have a great week, everybody. Look after yourselves, please, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.